Welcome into the final regular season episode of Untitled Blood Bowl Podcast DBA No Double Skull Enterprise LLC, the show. This is going to be slightly different than our normal episodes just due to the nature of the end of the season. We got all Week 12 games done and enough Week 13 games where there is not too much intrigue left in the end of the season.
Yeah, there's a little bit of mystery left. We're definitely screaming towards a close here. Just a handful of games to go to kind of like make the last bit a little bit more than a formality, right? We don't have time to cover all of the mayhem from the past week, but there was, from what I heard, quite a few really good games that are out there. I've got some notes on some of those. There were some that ended up being like really bloody games. Several people were leaving it all on the pitch to try to make their last ditch effort to get it into the playoffs. Quite a few players who were like on the bubble. Some of them still are, but some of them really fought tooth and nail for those last couple of spots. So I think there's only really two spots that are in contention right now. I think 14 out of the 16 playoff spots are spoken for. And so we'll get into the playoff picture in a bit. We're also going to cover our upcoming Destination Dollywood tournament lists. Talk about that just a little bit. That's this weekend. So that'll happen between this episode and the next one. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. This is my third total tournament for Blood Bowl, and the first one I played in was kind of last second as a ringer for Palmetto Cup last year. The second one I played in was one I had actually planned to participate in, which was the Christmas Carnage, and that was a total blast. So I'm looking forward to this tournament just being able to see how a three-man squad plays. Um, Coming from a Magic background, team constructed was always one of my favorite formats to play because you're playing with two other people. You get to choose them. You get to kind of strategize a little bit and talk. And from everything I heard, last year's Destination Blood Bowl was a pretty awesome trip.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah. Last year was in New Orleans, and it was a lot of fun. I played in that one. Our team got third. Now, this time around, the teammate and store owner Wayne is on your team.
Mhm.
He is not playing halflings this time. He's playing wood elves. Um, I played Amazons with Dribble and Drool last year. I think my final record was 3 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. My loss came at an opportune time because the other two people on my team won. And I think that was like the thing about the team tournament last time was that we had one person who like kind of underperformed through the day, but Wayne and I had some really good wins, and we managed to like pair those together. And so we managed to take third in that tournament. We did our so the list construction is completely different this time around. The last one was kind of I think from a tournament organizer standpoint, I think the last list construction was a headache. It's just one of those things where you're sorting through lists. I also think it makes it really hard for uh, ad hoc composite teams where if a group is bringing 4 people and they have like a spare person that's going to end up grouping with a couple of other people, that the last time you had a set amount of money for all 3 teams, and so some teams had to sacrifice some teams, like to make the team function, you had to like overspend on some. And so you also had to divide the stars up amongst the teams. And this time around, a lot of that stuff is just not in place. And it's just make a team, sit down and play. And so the interesting thing this time around is that I feel like there's a lot less gamesmanship about how to like put your team together. You had a certain number of points, so that way everybody just couldn't take tier one teams, right? Like if you wanted to take tier one teams, you were going to have to like sacrifice somebody else is going to have to play like a slightly worse team, and so that's missing this time around. This time around, it's just make a team. You can't use the same team across it, but make a team, slap them in there, and then and ride. So
Yeah, it's gonna be super interesting. I got to take pretty much the same list that I took to Christmas Carnage minus one skill. So that made it pretty easy to kind of figure out. It's like, okay, I can go without one skill and still get to play
yeah,
most of the list that I want. So that's looking forward to that. We got some practice games in with some of the other people going, which was super helpful just to kind of get into that vibe because it is tournament games are a completely different monster than a league setting where
yeah,
you have different things you care about.
right. Your
Uh,
priorities shift.
yeah, and that is coming from a more competitive standpoint from other games and playing tournaments like that. That is something that I really do appreciate is being able to sit there and be like, okay, I don't have to worry if my Jaguar dies. I'll get it back next game. It's like I
Yeah,
just have to deal with it for one game. It's fine.
yeah. You don't have to fret over like an apothecary decision.
Yes.
Somebody's taking a stat down and it's turn two. And you're playing against somebody whose team is pretty bashy. Do you keep the apothecary in the pocket type of thing? That's not the question in a tournament game, right? The question in a tournament game, a lot of lists can't take apothecaries, like you just can't fit them in. Um, yeah, I'm playing vampires this time around,
Mhm.
and so my team's going to end up being me on vampires, Barbie with Skaven, and Sean on gnomes, I believe is what he settled on. Um, and so there's no real reason to do like a tier one, two, and three for this event. You could just all play tier ones. But Sean likes going for best stunty when he goes to an event like that. And after playing Dark Elves for a season, Barbie felt like she was going to be a lot more comfortable playing Skaven again. She played Skaven at Chaos Cup, and she had like a lot of fun with it. She went back and forth over like what exactly her list should be, but she had like different things she wanted on it, and it was fun just kind of talking her through. It was like, well, if you add this to the list, you're gonna have to give up something else. She wanted to like put a wrestle strip gutter runner on her list. Like, well, if you do that, you're gonna end up losing skills here. And if it's like you're gonna have to get rid of a reroll, but you could get rid of a reroll, pick up leader or something like that. And so, it was fun seeing her like go through the micromanaging of a team and trying to fit everything on there that she wanted. Um, I eventually settled on my first attempt at a list, which I don't hate still, was going to be 5 vampires and 8 thralls and 5 rerolls. The only vampire you don't take is the second blitzer. You just take one blitzer. And my first playtest game was with pro on everybody, and then double stack the blitzer to have pro strip ball. And the idea there is that if the ball ends up on something big, you can still strip that off with the blitzer. And the pro and the 5 rerolls give you the consistency that the vampire team desperately craves in a tournament setting. And then what I opted on was mixing the skills up some. This tournament was a little bit different than a lot of the other ones I've played in that there was no skill limits. You could put 6 block if you wanted to. Um, and so I settled for block on one thrower, pro on the other thrower, block on the blitzer, dodge on both the runners, kick on a thrall, and sure hands on a thrall. That gives you 7 total skills amongst 7 different players. It's a little bit less all in. If you put like 2 skills on the blitzer and your opponent like removes it really early, that's a huge chunk of the team power just gone right there. So this democratizes some of the skills by spreading it out. It also gives me some more block standard. I still have 5 rerolls and 8 thralls, so I still have extra players in case I take a beating. And then I have a ton of rerolls for everything in the game. So
Yeah. Like I said, my team that I'm playing Amazons. That was what I played at Christmas Carnage. I had a blast with it. Got most fouls, so
yep,
super fun.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Dribble and drill good for that.
yes, Dribble and Drool are good for that, and Dribble and Drool will be featured in my roster. But my roster basically is I've got one thrower, I've got two blockers, both of them have block added as a skill, two blitzers, they both have wrestle added, and then I've just got uh, six linemen from there, line women, and then Dribble and Drool.
Yep.
Three rerolls, no apothecary. Came in at exactly the value that we got for roster selection and building. So
Yeah.
seemed like a sign, the perfect fit there.
Yeah, I've run very similar rosters to this in the past myself. I will attest for this list. I think this is like an extremely powerful tournament list. Wrestle combos really well with dribble and drool. You have a very potent fouling game, and that's like your primary form of removal. And your team is annoying to knock over because of all the dodge, and then having an extra block and wrestle at your disposal are really nice. The thrower is useful. Some Amazon lists will opt not to play the thrower, but I the last time I played that list, I saved a touchdown thanks to the throwers on the ball, uh, which you'll randomly get people with. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. As far as the other teammates I'm playing with, I got Wayne's playing Wood Elves, and then Juan is playing Snotlings.
Yep.
So each of us has a stunty team on our roster, and then some other just strong candidates. It's going to be an interesting tournament to play. One thing, I don't know if this was the case last year, but within the games themselves, when you're playing with your team, team versus team, you're playing against not only a team with a total record similar to you on Swiss, but also your opponent will be closer on that
Yeah,
Swiss level. So,
that's the way it was last year as well. Yeah, you end up playing someone that has a very similar record to you, and that's just Swiss in general. But the whoever has the best record on your team will be playing against the best record on the opponent's team, and just pare that down the list. And so yeah, that was I think Wayne was the one who had like the best record on our division. So Wayne ended up playing like all the really hard opponents. And I was in second last time, and so my opponents were very respectable. We had one round that was like a loss on our side. I think that was we had a couple rounds that were draws, and that was like kind of common in that because it's like if you're just like sampling Blood Bowl games, draws are common,
mm,
losses and win are also common, and so you end up with across 3 games. If you have one win, one loss, one draw on your team, then it's a draw for the team. And so that ended up happening quite a bit from what I heard. So
yeah, that it's going to be a super fun weekend. We'll probably do a recap when we get back as
yeah,
well. Just kind of talk
there
about
won't
it.
there won't be much to talk about on that next episode, right? Because we'll have the playoffs. We can do playoff previews.
Yeah,
We'll probably get a little bit more into the dissection of those games. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to this weekend for sure. And it'll be fun to play vampires again. I've played a couple test games here and there with vampires, but I haven't played them as much except for that one season. And so that season really developed the muscle memory for me for the hypnotic gaze plays and whatnot. So it'll be fun to play vampires in a tournament thing this time around. So
yeah. Well, I think that might be enough looking ahead. Now I got to look backwards a little
yep,
bit to a week that was pretty wild
yeah, yeah.
as far as games that
My
happened.
my original notes was that I was going to call it Losers Week here at the podcast because
Mm,
both of us did not fare so great in our last few games,
yeah.
not as much as we would like. But Yeah, there was one outstanding game from prior to week 12, and that was the week 11 game of Bad Moon Rising and the Slee Stacks. And it looks like the Bad Moon Rising took care of business with a 3-0 win over them. It also looked like there were quite a few crowd surfs in that game
Mm.
because a lot of Jeremy's injuries came from they were just like marked as injuries. And in tour play, that kind of implies either failed dodges or getting crowd surfed. And they were happening during Jim's turn. And uh, I don't know that I talked about it a whole lot on the podcast last time. I didn't want to like tip Jim's hand to the rest of the league. But Jim would do this really interesting thing where he'd set up the fletch golems on the flanks on defense and basically dare you to blitz a flesh golem because it could like stand firm there. And if you don't knock the flesh golem over, then you can frenzy a werewolf into the person that ran into the flesh golem and push them next to the sideline, then run a wraith around the other side and the flesh golem surfs them. And so I saw that line that he had and opted not to blitz flesh golems with stuff that I didn't want crowd surfed. Um, and just engage with like the center of his field instead. But I'm willing to bet Jeremy might have walked into that trap. I think it's easy to do if you can't view the opponent's turn and that trap just snapping on your leg there. So
Yeah, I mean it's like, especially like your pieces are so much more mobile. It's such an enticing target. If you get that flesh golem down,
yeah.
you've got all the sources. You're at a strength advantage. Like you feel pretty good about that game if you're able to get the flesh golems down.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but unfortunately, not able to do so. Yeah. Well, that was our outstanding week with some of the Week 12 games. So there were a couple. There was one like major upset, I would say, large upset, at least current company notwithstanding. Jolly Rotters 1-0 win over Return to Monkey.
Yeah, I think Clay pulled off a pretty good upset here. I talked to Sean after the game. He mentioned that he did not, I think he didn't peel a single player in the first half. And so the he failed to score. And I think he had several boneheads on the ball carrier, and that's just bad news, right? Like that can happen on the team when you're playing ogres. And so I think he had several boneheads, couldn't get anybody off the pitch. And if like the whole undead team's just on the pitch, they just really get in the way. Zombies are very good at getting in the way, and so uh, Clay managed to squeak a touchdown there at the very end of the game with like a ghoul, and and get away with a win there. So he actually, I think that secured a playoff spot for him, or at least it secured it secured not having to worry about the scrum for the last couple of spots in that division.
Yeah, that was a lock at that point.
Yeah.
So like 19 points, more than enough to secure you there. Yeah, I guess I can talk a little bit about my game against Gavin. I was uh, not very interesting, is what I would say. Like I think you're not gonna win a game generally when your opponent gets more knockdowns than you and more
Yeah.
armor breaks than you.
Yeah,
If you're a Ashy team,
and you're on the other side of like the armor differential, right? Like
yeah,
yeah, when you're a 10 armor team and a rat ogre gets 3 casualties in the game against you, you're probably in bad shape.
yeah,
A non-claws rat ogre even. So
yeah, and it seemed like there were, yeah, just an inordinate amount of armor breaks. Both runners got knocked out in the first half.
it's hard to score at that point.
Yeah, it's also hard to knock out a
Yeah.
player with thick skull.
Yeah.
So there was a chance to score at the end of the first half after all of that with a blitzer, but in order to free up a, in order to clear the line, I had to make a 2-die block with the death roller into, which would have then led to a 2-die block with frenzy with the troll slayer to then let the blitzer try to pick up the ball in a blitz and get out. I had a reroll, and then Death Roller went skull both down
Oof.
and
Failed the loner.
failed
So it was
loner.
loner 5 plus, right?
Yeah,
It
loner
was.
5. So was not a super high
Yeah.
percentage play anyway, but it was the only thing I had that could possibly make a score.
Yeah.
There wasn't, he had no one in scoring position. So that kind of saved it. And then the second half, I was down players and yeah,
It's hard to stop Skaven from scoring, just period. Even if you have 11 people on the pitch.
yeah.
I think it's easy to get out of position with dwarves against Skaven. It's even easier to be out of position if you're down players.
Yeah, it's very easy to be out of position when your players are stunned the majority of the game. So yeah, that was a fairly disappointing, kind of annoying loss. Like a win there would have locked
Yeah.
for playoffs at this point, given the rest of the things that happened. So yeah, frustrating game. Hoping to turn that dice luck around for the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to comment on the of Salesman and Might of Asgard game. That was a draw.
Mhm.
That was a bloody game.
Mhm.
Both teams, like if you look at the casualties, I think there were like four total casualties. But if you look at the injuries, there were an insane number of injuries because fouling went crazy in that game. I believe one of the beer bores was like 3 for 3 taking out Black Orcs on fouls. At one point, every single Black Orc on Jurgen's team was either KO'd or injured in that game. But a lot of that happened in the second half. And so Jurgen was able to score, and then Austin was able to run the ball in because there wasn't much in the way of opposition. And so that was a really entertaining game from what I saw. I got to see chunks of that.
Yeah.
So
That was a game that was similar to the previous game for Austin, where it's like you need to get points here to stay in the conversation.
yeah,
So a draw was points, and also put him in the position that we will get to at
yeah,
the end when we're talking about the playoff scenario.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, rounding out a couple of those games, we had the GG's 4-0, the Teal Terror. Barbie's ability to keep her team alive kind of like ran out this last game. She took almost as many casualties in this game as she had taken like any other number of games combined. She got beat up pretty badly, and so at that point, if your opponent just doesn't have a team, it's easy to just keep running the ball in over and over.
Mhm.
The Rotten Peaches in the Halfling Justice game was a like I think both people said that Wayne should have won that game, but based off of like how his dice luck was, and I believe the Peaches lost 5 out of 6 of their rerolls to the Halfling Master Chef in the game. And having played Amazons quite a bit, I'm sure you'll agree with me. You want your rerolls for Amazons because there's always something stupid that you'll fail.
Correct.
And the rerolls are an excellent safety net. And so, but he and I think John even lost a bunch of players during the course of the game. But that's a testament to how powerful just random Amazon models are. That you'll stay in a game long after you're supposed to have lost it.
Yeah. As someone who lost 5 of their 6 rerolls to the chef, I can emphasize with that
Yeah.
a little bit, but draws are nice.
Yep. On the topic of absurd games, we had the 4-4 Trojans and ROUS draw, where the teams were basically trading touchdowns back and forth.
Mhm.
And running, that was like the most star player points scored in a game this season by the two teams combined. It's something like 60 something in that game between all the casualties and the touchdowns. Um, yeah, kind of a barn burner there. I think that was one where both teams were happy to just put the points up because that meant that uh, they are getting closer to the playoffs with better stacked players.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a wild, yeah, 62 total SPP between the two.
Yeah, apparently the perfect passing was rolled on one of the prayers to Nuffle, and so Chase used that opportunity to try to throw as many passes as he could in the game. And so that just meant putting the ball in over and over and over again, right? You get the ball back, you get a chance at a completion. So
Let's see. Other games that mattered. Another one that we're gonna have to kind of get to a little bit. The interdivisional game this week. The V Stars 2-1 win over the Electric City Maulers. That
Yes.
was that was a must win to stay in contention.
Yep. And he did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's we'll get more into that
Yeah.
because
We'll
it's
get into that in a second because we have a really interesting playoff scenario that we're gonna keep alluding to. We're gonna keep setting the stage for it, but we'll get to it.
yeah,
Gnarly Oaks beat the Dodge This, and that knocked Dodge This out of the playoff contention. Though they were like an underdog for a bit there, and Gnarly Oaks was scrapping for survival. But a win in that game locked Sean for the playoffs. And the Zero Luck Chucks beat the the Boyus 2-1, and that was a lock for Coop, who desperately didn't want to be in the playoffs because he didn't want to play any more Blood Bowl. But they did put the Boyus in a position where they had to win their last game to be in the playoffs, which they did do.
spoilers.
So, well,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll get
okay,
there.
yeah,
But the Jim tied with Alucard in a 1-1. I believe now that Alucard's team is eliminated from the playoffs. But I see that he is still playing to make people remember that he's in the league by drawing Jim there, right? So that looked to be kind of a grindy game. I'm not sure that anybody was really in danger in that game in like an undead versus undead. But still, you want to keep your team safe right for the
yeah,
playoffs.
yeah. I was in the building for the start of that game, and I heard failed regenerations, which is not the thing you want to hear
Yeah,
as an undead player when it happens to you.
yeah,
But yeah, losing both those flesh golems in the first half, like
that's crazy. Yeah,
yeah, does not feel good.
yeah,
Like if both get casualties, you expect one to be out for the game, like
right.
failed regen, but losing both with now you're at a strength disadvantage against like
Oh
mummies.
yeah,
That's
that
scary,
that's
scary place to be.
yeah, not exactly where you want to be.
Yeah.
Ness pulled off the upset against me 2-1. Um, I'll go over the last play of the game that Ness used to win the game. So the on the final turn, my turn 15, I finally managed to pick up the ball. I'll set the stage for you. There's a bunch of scrums all over the pitch because it's mummies and corn. We're all kind of like tangled up in a couple different places. I'm down on people. I had something like five people peeled on like the second or third turn of the second half, just in the same turn. Just a bunch. I lost a bunch of people, including the blood spawn. And so Ness has scored, and I have failed to pick up the ball twice, 2 turns in a row, burning at least one reroll on that. And so he's got people who are moving into my backfield. He has like two models who could score from the position that I'm in. And so what I do is I have to make a dodge with one of my marauders, and I have to push his blitzer away from the ball. And I managed to knock the blitzer over and put it on the sideline. Um, and then my other marauder finally manages to pick up the ball. And I run up, and my plan is to just throw the ball towards like midfield just to get it away from my end zone. And I even go for like a 6 away pass instead of like a 10 or a 12 because I don't want like the cumulative minuses to make it more likely that I'm wildly inaccurate. But I roll a 2 on it and I'm out of rerolls. And so I roll a 2 on the pass and it scatters right up next to the sideline, but then stays in bounds. And it goes like a little bit, like it goes a ways towards midfield enough. And so the only way Ness can score, he stands up with his blitzer and has to throw a 1 die into the guy who knocked him over, who has wrestle, by the way. So if he rolls a both down, then I can just put his model on the ground, and that's that. Um, and so he rolls a skull. He has a team mascot left over at this point. He rolls the 5+ to get the mascot reroll. And then he rolls a pal to knock my guy over. And then he has to roll a go for it to get in the end zone, and he gets that. And he has to run his thrower all the way over to the ball. And he doesn't have enough movement to get close enough to make the pass anything other than a 5. And so he has to roll a pass. He picks up the ball with the thrower. The throwers are agility 4. They do have sure hands to get reroll for it, but he just rolls it the first time. And then he throws the 5+ pass. The first roll is a 3. The reroll gets him a 5. Then he's got a catch on a 4. And then he rolls the 4 to catch it, gets the second touchdown to win the game. So that game was very close to being a draw, despite the much adversity that I faced in that game. But he had quite a bit of rolls that went his way on the final turn to win the game. He had some re-rolls for some of it, but he was like on a knife's edge of just the game being a draw. So yeah, that was my game for last week. So
Yeah, that was so. Yeah, week 12. At the end of week 12, before any of the week 13 games had gotten played, we had some question marks still about what was going to happen. And then
we've got about a third of the games played
yeah,
so far.
yeah, we got about a third of games, and one important game in the Snake Eyes division locked in the top 8 players.
Yeah.
And so now we're at the point where those games just matter for seeding. The game we're talking about being Great Tree Good Boys 2-0 win over Dodged Us,
Yep.
lock them in. And like you had previously mentioned, Gnomes as a stunty team prefer to play against these bashy teams. They're just like a little bit more resilient than your typical stunty team to that. And you also have a like scoring threats on your roster in the Foxes, so you get a little bit more flexibility with your inducements than say like halflings.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, halflings are usually having to induce. They have to induce the Master Chef. The team is just balanced around a reroll disparity between you and your opponent. Right. That's the way Halfling Master Chef is designed, and the halflings as a team are designed. And then a lot of times you have to freeboot something that's going to win the game for you as halflings. In this instance, the gnomes versus other stunty teams is an interesting matchup. In this case, the Black Orcs. I'm saying the Black Orcs are like an honorary stunty team. They should probably be like tier 3. They should just based off of like the tournament performance that they have, right? They're not really a tier 2 team. Like you can't say that they're on the same caliber as like an Elven Union or Vampires or any of these other tier 2 teams that exist. They just don't have the same. They don't have the same advantages as other teams do, and their team is like half goblins. So a lot of the stunty stuff applies to this team as well. So yeah, I'm not surprised by Gnomes pulling that one out. So
Yeah, one notable thing from that game, looking at the box score. So in the game, uh, Dodge this overdogged a little bit. They took a bribe and bomber, which then gave the boys a chance to take a keg, Rumbelow, and Cindy. And it looks like Bomber got fouled out of the game on turn 3. So, like, losing your overdog inducement plan 3 turns into a game is like you've just kind of lost so
yeah,
much value in that point.
yeah. So Gnomes versus other stunties is a really interesting matchup for a lot of reasons. The Gnomes are at a disadvantage in combat versus other stunty players because they don't have dodge. And if you take the both down, like the one advantage they have is the wrestle, you're not getting armor breaks. Now, the gnome is really good at like putting another stunty player on the ground because of the both down potential, right? And that's good against bomber. Like walking up to bomber and wrestling him to the ground is good because it means he can't throw a bomb on the next turn, right? So yeah, it's interesting. It feels like kind of like a chess match, sort of, right? Because it's a lot of people can kind of dodge where they want in that game. The gnomes get like a bit of a strength advantage with the trees plus guard, being able to guard, like move, dodge a stunty guard into places is just extremely powerful.
Yeah. So yeah, that game, like I said, locked it in. So we are now looking at the
And I think the Zero Luck Chucks 2-0 over Plague of Gods gate kept Plague Ness out of the top eight because Ness and Will had the same record, and Ness had the head to head. Ness won their regular season game. So Zero Luck Chucks went on a tear at the end of the season, something like 5 games in a row of wins. And that knocked the Plague of Gods out of contention there.
Yep. So yeah, your top eight for Snake Eyes. I got Bad Moon Rising, Slaughterhouse 11, Zero Luck Chucks, Great Tree Good Boys, Electric City Maulers, Gnarly Oaks, the Southern California Trojans, and ROUS. Those standings are subject to change. There's still a lot of games to be played.
Yep.
So, and a lot of people with similar point totals. So there could be some very large shifts potentially depending on how these
Yeah.
games play out.
So right now, Jim is most likely first in our division. Now, in the event that Jim ties or loses his game and I win, then I jump back into first place. Um, if I cannot fall out of second place, Jim cannot fall out of first or second place with losses. Um, so at this point, my floor is second place. Now, third place in the division, who knows? It is either David or going to be Travis. Um, if Henderson wins, he jumps up to 24th, 24 points. I believe Coop beat him in the regular season. We'd have to go back and look just to double check that. No, he lost. So Coop lost that game. So Henderson would have won the head to head there. So Henderson would go to third with a win. Now, everybody else at that point, um, depending on their wins or losses, is going to go to different places. And then we'll have to figure out the tie breaks from there because there is like a 3-way tie between Sean, Chase, and Juan right now. And I believe all of them, none of them are playing each other, right? Nope. Nope. Yeah, so none of them are playing each other. Um, Sean is playing Warren, and crazier things have happened, but I think Sean might win that game against Warren's Goblin team. And so then it would come down to the tie break between Sean, Chase, and Juan to see where they all kind of like end up. So yeah, it's who knows what third through eighth looks like right now. And the other side, the other half, the other division is looking at that eight slot, that 6, 7, and 8 slot, with some amount of trepidation for sure, right? Like, do you want to play against Juan's team, who has the most star player points at slot number 8 in the division? That would feel pretty bad. Playing against this jacked Skaven team.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing to think about. Like if you're going into your last game, your consideration of your it is such a big gulf between what you'd want to
Yeah,
the matchups you could play.
right, right.
Because like
Well, no, and the thing is, so just because of the way, like Henderson, I think is a good case study. If Henderson wins his game, he's like third in the division. If Henderson loses his game and everybody else wins, he is eighth,
mhm.
right? And that's just one of those wild disparity of like this division was like really, really, really close down the stretch. It looked like me and Jim were gonna like run away with this division, but like both of us had a pretty rough stretch towards the end here. And so a lot of people down the standings actually caught up with us.
Yeah.
And so there were some teams. I think Juan was another good case study of like a team that really struggled at the beginning, and then put it together down the stretch. And then now his team's kind of like expensive, so I think he just ends up giving stuff to his opponents that they can use to help to try to destroy him.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean it's we've got quite a division here.
Damn. Yep. Yeah. The thing we had been alluding to.
Yes,
So 14 out of the 16 playoff slots have been finalized as
right.
far as where player like as far
Yeah,
as who is in.
yeah. So on the
Uh,
dead man's hand side,
Dead Man's Hand side. So currently locked.
yeah,
Halfling Justice, with a win
or a draw,
or a draw.
they're in first place.
Yes.
I think they end up being in first place regardless. I guess a loss. No, yeah, a loss would put Sean up. Well, if they had Sean won the game, so Sean has the head to head.
Yes.
Now Wayne is playing against Barbie. She has gone 0 for 12 for this season.
Mhm.
Um, I would be really proud of her if she put it together for this game and somehow beat Wayne.
Yeah.
I am skeptical that will occur, though.
Yeah. With a draw, there is one potential scenario, which I cannot allow to happen, which would be um, the
Jennings,
Rotten Peaches getting a win.
yeah,
So with a draw, Halfling Justice is at 29 points. Rotten Peaches with a win go to 29 points. They drew in the
then,
head to head.
yep,
And the first tiebreaker is the touchdown differential, which if it if Jennings won by one touchdown, they would be tied. At which point it would go to the next tiebreaker, which is touchdown is
casualties
casualty,
plus, yeah.
which
Uh,
you would not want to go to that tiebreaker as a stunty team.
no, no,
So
yeah,
that is like the one scenario, but I believe, barring a loss from Half Injustice and a loss or a draw from the Rotten Peaches, that's pretty much a lock.
yeah,
The
first
only
place,
way that
yeah,
Sean would jump up is with a Half Injustice loss, would
right,
be
yep,
to first. Um, Book of Grudges currently sitting at fourth. They're also safe.
yep, yeah, they're
Uh,
safe. How did the Jurgen and I game go?
I want to say that was a draw, but I will confirm.
The I'd won.
Okay.
So with a win from Jurgen, he would go to 25 points, and then Ide has the head to head against him, so he would be in fifth place.
Yeah. So I think that means that I is locked at fourth. But he cannot drop.
Yes, so I think Ide's right there. Right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That is so.
He's not gaining or losing any more points.
Yeah.
And then the only person that could catch him is Jurgen, who can't surpass him. And then he lost the head to head. So Jurgen. No, so I guess Jurgen and Clay are playing for the final week, and so they're
Right.
actually playing for fifth or sixth. Then, right?
Yes.
Um, so yeah, that game matters for positioning.
Yeah.
Um,
And I know we briefly touched on the outcome of Jurgen's previous game against the Norse, but prior to a firing and hiring of Black Orcs, there were 4 Black Orcs that were missing this game
yeah,
due to fouls and other injuries
yeah.
sustained against the Norse.
Yeah, including but not limited to the Block Mighty Blow guard Black Orc. Um, you're gonna wish you had that guy when you're playing against Undead.
Right. So yeah, so that game is for fifth and sixth. Uh, like that will have to be a win for
I
Clay.
Clay's down 2 ghouls for that game, so that's something.
Yeah.
That's something for sure.
Okay. Now we get to the interesting part.
Yeah,
So there are seventh and eighth are the last remaining spots. These are the spots in question.
yeah,
There are 4 teams total in contention for those spots.
yes,
The current teams at 7 and 8 have already played their games. So Austin picked up a loss in the last round against Ide, and it was a 3-0 loss, which is very important for the future discussion.
yep,
Chris picked up a draw against Return to Monkey, so that put him at 16. And but because of, like I said, tiebreakers, Austin got the win in the regular season over Chris. He is currently sitting above him.
Yep.
Next up in the standings, it looks a little bit funky because of the way that tour play involves players coming in part of the way through the season.
Yeah.
But the next person in line, I'm kind of sitting on the outside
Yep.
with 14 points.
Yep.
So Chris and Austin already played their week 13 games. If I win my game, which is going to be a daunting task, playing someone who is the only remaining team that has not lost a game this season, all wins and draws.
Yep.
So I need to get a win. That'll put me to 17 points. I will be above both of them. I will be locked in.
Right. And then
The next person down.
I was gonna say, well, Austin then bumps Chris out because of the head-to-head.
Correct. So that is currently standing. And then there is Mike.
Yep. He's at 13 points.
Mike is at 13 points. He has one game left in the last week against the Imperial City Retainers. They have been on a 10-game skid. So that is it's looking like favored for Mike, just given his team, the composition. I think both teams are probably going to be going in with 11 players.
Yeah. And
And
both teams have sustained 30 or more injuries. Both teams have had one team has had 8 players die, the other team has had 6 players die. So both teams have lost a lot of players throughout the league.
Yeah. So I think that somewhat favors the Wood Elves, just because if you get
individual players are typically better on them.
Yeah, your players are better. You would feel more comfortable scoring if you're down players. But if you're players, I think you can really push the advantage, and then you're just sitting there with war dancers.
Yeah.
And a war dancer versus a gutter runner in a fight, you probably don't want to be the gutter runner.
No.
Especially when you've got tackle war dancers.
Yeah.
So Mike's currently at 13 points. A win would put him to 16 points.
Yes.
And that would put him in a 3-way tie with Austin and Chris, which then changes the math completely.
Yes, because during the regular season, it was Austin beat Chris, Chris beat Mike, Mike beat Austin.
Yes.
So then you have a 3-way tie between people. You go to head, and there's no winner in the head because everybody beat everybody else. And so then it goes to touchdown differential, in which case Chris jumps ahead because he's got the best touchdown differential at +5. Austin is at -3, and Mike is at -6.
Yes.
And so Mike needs to win by 4 touchdowns in the Fred game. Because then his touchdown differential would be -2, which would give him a jump ahead of Austin in the touchdown differential. And you have to lose.
Correct.
So Mike has a very specific scenario for him to get into the playoffs. And it involves a hell of a last game and some help.
Yeah.
So a tie or a draw, right? For your last game.
Correct.
Sorry, a draw or a loss.
Yeah. He needs me to not win.
Yeah. A non-Yannie win plus 4 touchdowns.
Yes. So that is the scenario we're looking at. But even then, he does kind of get to play this gatekeeper game a little bit, because if he wins and I win, he takes Austin out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because Chris will be the first out of those 3.
Yep.
And he will get that 8th slot.
Yep. Yeah.
There's also a more convoluted scenario, which if Mike gets the 3-0 win or a margin of victory of 3 to tie Austin to then go to the casualty differential, so this is just another thing where they've had very similar seasons, where they've had a couple games where they got outscored and then we're getting mercilessly beaten down. So they both have negative casualty differentials as well. Austin's is -15 and Mike's is -18.
Right.
So
if he wins by 3, but he causes 4 or more casualties, right?
Yeah, if he out casualties Fred, by 4 with a 3-0 win,
Yeah.
then there's also a chance for him to jump ahead.
Yeah.
So lots of interesting just from those 2 games. Um, I'm hoping to keep it interesting with my
Yeah.
game. Would have liked to not have to play basically a play-in
Yeah.
game at this point, but that's where I'm at. This is a game that I really would have liked to have earlier in the season when there was no block, and that is a thing that I have said since week 1 is that I
Yeah.
wanted to get this game
Earlier and earlier. You got a
yeah,
last possible chance.
yeah, which seems to be just the tail of the season.
Yeah.
But what I can say to other playoff contenders is that um, it will be at worst a moral victory through immoral means. So
Yeah. Yeah, I
like,
mean, if
I
you
think either we both make the playoffs or neither one of us is going to advance in the playoffs because I'm going to
right.
try to grind Amazons to dust.
Yeah. Yeah. As well
So,
you should.
yeah.
All right. In memoriam, we have a gnome lineman named Slime.
Yes.
He's dead.
Typically, Metal Slime was the one that
Yeah.
was dying the most and coming back. But
Yeah. This time it was just regular slime. Just regular slime.
that's what happens when you're not metal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Schwarzenegger, the Yeti died, which is a big loss for Austin.
Yeah.
He had actually gotten a casualty in that game too, so the Yeti was ready for a mighty blow.
Yeah.
But he is dead.
Yeah. And
instead.
that did happen in the game against Of Salesman.
Yeah.
So that was a feeling. Austin was going into that game, coming out of the game we played, down an overrunner and losing his
Good Valkyrie.
yeah, his rising star Valkyrie.
Yeah.
So then losing the Yeti
Yes.
going into his last week. I think that's just like cascading. It's just like piled on, leading to that 3-0 loss against Chaos Taurus.
Yeah. Yep. Lachlan, the Dark Elf on Teal Terror died. Cryan Dustlasher, the Skaven lineman died. That was a gray Poxfangs lineman. Zota Goa, the Deadly, was a Saurus for the Sleestax who was killed by Morg, of all things. Axboo, the Goof, was another skink who died in that game. Conrada Hanselman, a human lineman for the GGs, died. Vinny, the leader, a Norse lineman who had a couple of skill ups, died against Ide. And then Rumbelow Sheepskin also died, but he will obviously make a return. So
yeah. The privilege of being a star player,
yep,
being able to die over and over again. If only they were permanent, the swords would not have gotten killed by Morg since Morg. But
yeah, exactly. I could have solved all my Morg problems earlier in the season for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
All right, I think that wraps it up for us.
Yeah. I know this was a little bit different, but
yeah,
obviously we're down to the wire this season. We've got 8 games left. And
we ran through all the different playoff scenarios. I think the last little bit over there is a very interesting race, basically. It's a foot race for those last couple of spots.
Yes, and I have tiny little legs, so I have to snap twice as hard. But
yeah, a good thing dwarves are known for their sprinting. So
oh gosh, well with a runesmith maybe. But yeah. If you were listening, you liked what you have been listening to, would appreciate giving us a follow wherever you're listening. Like it, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can check us out on Substack as well. They haven't had a bunch of posts on there recently, but we'll get some more content. We'll have some playoff content for sure. And then next week we'll have some talk about Dollywood, like a little recap, and have a full playoff preview as long as people can be patient and not play their games in
I don't think I know mine and Henderson's games, it was scheduled for as we're recording this podcast, but it's been pushed back, and it might be before we get back. I mean, it might be after we get back from Dollywood before it gets played. So
that's the way to do it.
That's a big hold up on the playoffs. Not a big deal ultimately, because we'll be I'll be Blood Bowl out this weekend.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I'll be ready for some non-vampire games by that point. So
Yes. All right. Well, yeah. Appreciate you listening, and we will catch you next time.
all right, we'll see ya.